Okay, let's come on back and talk about some of these things. Let's talk about some of these things. First off, let's chat about everything we know about inheritance. Let me share my screen. That would be helpful. There we go. Everything we know about inheritance. Well, we know that the children inherit methods and information from parent classes. Children inherit methods and information. What do you mean by information? We could use the term state, right? Or like instance variables or state. So that brings us to our first two vocab words, behavior, right? Behavior is simply methods that exist in classes, right? Or on an instance. Going back to mod 0, thinking about some object-oriented programming stuff. Methods are simply, that's the behavior of the class, right? The behavior. And state, I hate this term, I don't know why, but state is just like instance variables. You can think about state in a class as just like instance variables, right? It's like information about a thing. In this case, like an instance, maybe. Information about an instance. Going back to mod 0, thinking about some basic OOP stuff. Behavior methods and state are instance variables. Okay, this and distinction is really important when we talk about inheritance. Both methods and information, both behavior and state. This is true. A parent of a parent is known as an ancestor. Parent can have many children, but a child can have only one parent. That is true. Yes, we can use inheritance as refactoring when we see multiple classes using similar same methods and state, right? Or like instance variables in this case. Want to make that distinction? All right, some questions about inheritance. Do we need to use inheritance in our projects? If you want to get a better score, yes, you do. One thing about inheritance that Mike may have talked about yesterday, I think Mike did listen. With these refactoring patterns or like object-oriented patterns, you only want to use them when it's completely obvious that you should be using them. You don't want to fit a square peg into a round hole. Here's an example. If I want a class to be able to use some methods in regards to inheritance, I assume here, but absolutely not others, how would I do that? I would say, don't use inheritance if this is the case. Right? Maybe you only have one method or two methods that you want all the children in class to share for some reason. Well, then I would argue maybe that's not a use case for inheritance because it's not obvious that you should do it. We've been doing it along with object-oriented programming, maybe secretly, but not explicitly telling you that you've been doing it, I would say. I can't think of any examples up to this point where we've been using inheritance specifically for a reason. Can inheritance work via class variables? I'm not sure. We'll have to get back to you on that. My argument here would you should be using class variables. Probably shouldn't be using class variables. Okay, there's one important thing, maybe in the Zoom chat you can put it, but what is the litmus test to find out if we should be using inheritance? In the Zoom chat, what is the litmus test for when we should be using inheritance? By litmus test, like what's the thing we measured against to find out if we should be using inheritance or not? It's 3 letters is the clue from the inheritance lesson. When should we be using inheritance? Yes, we use it to dry up our code for sure, Keegan, but specifically when it comes to inheritance, like how do we know something is a child of something? I just said it. We use is a, right? Passes is a. Right? Disney World is a theme park. Universal Studios is a theme park. What's a theme park? Don't know because COVID. But it needs to pass the is a litmus test, right? If it doesn't fit, then it won't work, right? My Android phone is a fruit. Is it a fruit? No. Probably shouldn't use inheritance there, right? Here's a phrase you should be using when you think about, should we be using inheritance or not? Cool. So Bob, let me keep sharing here. Bob, why do we spend all this time talking about inheritance? Isn't today's lesson about modules? It is. So inheritance passes is a litmus test. And you want shared behavior and state, right? That's what inheritance is. Well, we use modules. We have the following criteria. Here's some characteristics of modules that we'll talk about first. They look similar to classes, but they only hold methods. Modules only store behavior, right? Same thing. They only hold methods. They only store behavior. Modules do not store state, right? So they don't have instance variables. Sorry, I read in someone's feedback, which I've heard a lot, is I need to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to do a better job there. Especially in coding. So I need to remind myself of that. And since modules are not a class, they cannot be instantiated. Instantiated, we mean you can't use the new keyword on a module, basically. So modules, very similar to inheritance, is we want to apply some sort of behavior or methods to multiple classes, but we don't care about the state, right? There's no state on a module. We use modules when we want to apply behavior or methods to multiple classes, but we do not care about state. Modules do not hold instance variables. They cannot be instantiated with the new keyword. Questions on, I talked about a lot here. Let's start with inheritance. Any remaining questions about inheritance or clarification on what inheritance is? Okay, any questions about modules up to this point? I know we haven't seen any code. We just sort of talked about what they are and when we would use them. But the main point I want to hammer home is modules only care about behavior when we want to apply behavior to multiple classes in some way. Is there a similar litmus test to know when to use a module? Yes, when we do not care about state. We do not care about state.
This is a one-way street, right? Like you're not going to put classes on modules. You're just going to put modules on classes.
Yes, we're just going to include modules and classes, which you will see.
Okay.
Which you will see. We're just going to include modules and classes. In today's lesson, at least, modules can be used for multiple things, but today we'll just be talking about how to include modules and classes so we get that applied shared behavior of that module. Okay. Ryan S. had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you include a module in a class and then that class inherits a class, does it get the modules from the original class?
Ryan asked if you have a class that inherits from another class, so it's a child of a parent, and you include a module. Will that class include both those methods from the module and the parent class? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. I don't think I've ever seen a child class and a module before, but I'm sure it exists somewhere. Dougie has a question. I was about to say Carlisle. Dougie has a question. Go ahead.
It's fighting words, Bob.
I know. Sorry, I've taught you for 6 weeks already. I probably should have Dougie. Go ahead.
Is there a way that we differentiate modules from classes other than the fact, like, are they named? Should they be named differently, or should you really just look at it and be like, okay, this has no initialize, this has no instance variables, this is probably a module?
Yes, you'll see it'll use the keyword module when you define it. So when we define a class, right, it uses this Ruby keyword, reserved keyword called class, but it would literally just use the word module here instead when we created it.
Gotcha, thanks.
KK has a question. Go ahead.
How do you test modules if they don't have behaviors? Do you only assert instance off and that's it, or?
That is a really good question. So the question is, how do you test modules if you cannot instantiate them in some way, basically? I will have to look that up because I've never tested a module before. That is a very good question, though.
Thank you.
I will find out in one of these breaks. And then Aiden has a question. Go ahead.
If you were using a module and it had a ton of methods in it that are accomplishing different things, would you maybe break that up into multiple different smaller modules, or would you just put it all in one?
Sure. So Aiden asked, let's say you had a module that was doing a lot of different things. Would you break that into different modules? And I would say, think about the single responsibility principle, right? If your module, your class, any of these things, right? Your class module, if you have to use the word end to describe its responsibility, then you probably need to break it out into 2 separate classes or 2 separate modules. So just like classes, modules should be small and have one single responsibility. Should do one thing. Okay. There's a vocab. I will get back to that in a little bit. I definitely will post it after the lesson. Your feedback's very helpful. I was told to zoom out a little bit so we could see the entire lines in Atom, which I'll try to do more of. Okay, we'll just talk about these 2 classes and how they work. And then after a 5-minute break, we'll talk how we might refactor this into a module. Remember, with inheritance or modules, it needs to be obvious that we should refactor it out into that thing before we do it. Okay, let's think about a social network like the Facebook.com. Get to this for a second. Okay. We're creating a social media network called the Facebook.com. Here is the concept of a post. It has content, comments. You can add a comment, right, to a post. Remove a comment by just delete is a method that just finds that comment, basically, if it exists in there, and then removes it from this instance variable comments array. All text is just like printing the text. You don't have to worry too much about that method. And then we have a comment, which is just text, and also has a instance variable comments, right? If you think about some of these social media networks, a comment can have a comment and can have a string of them. We have a add comment method here and a remove comment method. And then I just have a little runner file here, basically, that posts some media stuff. Here's the original post, Doge with it. Here's a comment that is Doge. And then here's a comment on that comment, right? I'll show it here. Here's a new post. Here is a comment. We're adding that comment to the post. Here's another comment, and we're adding that comment to this comment, right? So comments can have comments when you think about social media. And then we're just like posting the text of that post. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll talk about some similarities between post and comment. And Jahar, I will post this in the backend code help channel, these files. Let's take a 5-minute break till 30 after. We'll see you then. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So last off, I posted the code I created in the backend code help channel if you wanted or needed it. All right, so we have this simple comment class and a post class. So when we think about when we want to create a module, it's when we have similar or the same behavior we want to apply to multiple classes. Why doesn't everyone take a minute or two? I'm sharing my screen. Here are the two classes. Tell me what methods are the same in these two classes. Just take like 30 seconds and think about what methods are exactly the same in these classes that we might want to extract into a module. My recording, the same. That's Claudia, that's correct. Add comment and remove comment are the same, right? They either add to the comments instance variable or they remove the comment, they delete it in some way. So what we could do here is we can create a module. We'll call this module commentable. The convention for creating modules is the kind of behavior we want to apply, and then the word able afterward, like commentable. You've been using a module very much in Ruby. In the chat, what is the name of the module you've been using? It ends with able. It's applied behavior to multiple classes. or instances. Does anyone know in the chat what module have been using this entire time? You had 2 lessons on it. Yes, it's enumerable. So enumerable is behavior, right? Where you can apply that behavior to a collection, whether that collection is an array, right? An array or a hash. Those are different data types, right? And they're different instances of different classes. So enumerable is an example of we are applying behavior to different classes, right? Applying behavior to different classes. Or this iterate over a collection. So for a hash, it would iterate over each key and value pair. And for array, it would iterate over each thing in that array. Each thing in that array. So enumerable is an example of you using a module without knowing it. Okay, so how do we create a module? Well, we use the keyword module and then the name of our module. This looks pretty similar to our class creation, right? One thing we need to remember is we don't have initialize, right? Because we can't instantiate a module. We can't instantiate a module. I know all you soft wrap fans are laughing that I had to make a new line for this thing. We don't have initialize because we can't instantiate a module, right? So we don't create initialize here. And then so what we would want to do is the methods or behavior that we want the same. We would simply, in this case, copy and paste the add comment and remove comment. Right? Because these are the methods or behavior we want to be able to apply to anything, any class or instance, I guess, that is we can comment on, right? We can comment on a post, we can comment on a comment. Okay, let's just let's comment these lines out for now in post and also in, let's see, I'll move our comment over here and comment out these posts as well. Now, how do we include that module? Well, we use the keyword include. And a require statement. So we know, oh boy. So we know where to include that code from. So we use this include keyword and the name of the module whose behavior we want to use, right? Whose behavior we want to use or methods we want to use. So now add comment and remove comment are methods that are available to us in the comment class by including that module here on line 3. And then we'll also do it to the post as well. A post is commentable, right? I don't know why I keep saying this. Require commentable. Then we include that as well. Include the module. I thought someone raised their hand. Maybe they put it back down. How do we test this if this still works? Well, if I wrote a testing suite, I could have done that by just creating a runner file instead. So let's just run our runner file and see if it still works. Undefined method add comments. Okay, did something wrong here? No method error. Did I mean comments? Did not mean that. Include commentable. I thought I should be able to now call that comment on it. I swear I did this beforehand. Sorry, let me just look it up real quick.
Do you need to require commentable in your runner file?
I wouldn't think I need to since I included on the instance, but it's definitely possible. Let me try that, Dougie. I think that would make sense, actually.
Hey, Bob, you're not screen sharing.
Yeah, sorry. I will share in a second.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is embarrassing. I swear I ran this beforehand.
You require statements. You said /lib comment, not commentable.
I'm pretty sure I did /lib commentable. Here, let me share again.
Bob, it's also super validating to us who struggle with all of the things Google all the time.
I appreciate that. Let me see what's going on here. Okay. Commentable. Did I not save commentable? Is that why? Yes. I did not save my file. So note 2, I don't think we need this here, actually. It should still work. There we go. Sorry, anyone have like technical interview nerves? It's the same thing when you're teaching when something doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I just didn't save my commentable file. Okay, note to self, get the autosave module when moving away from a file. Okay. I was like, why isn't this working? All right. Okay, we can delete these methods now that we extracted out. Alex, thank you for that comment, by the way. That was very empathetic and kind. Cool. So we ran a runner file and it still works. It still works. Okay. Does anyone want to be brave? Describe when you would use a module versus inheritance. What's the difference when you would use a module over inheritance? If you want to raise your hand. Andrew S., go ahead.
Apparently, we don't care about state.
Yes, when we do not have actual state in the module itself. Now, it's interesting because when we look at this commentable, it is using this comments instance variable, right? It's actually relying on the class that includes this module to have an instance variable called comments. So it might not necessarily be when we don't care about state, but there's no actual state on this module itself, right? There's no actual state on the module itself. It might utilize the state for the class that includes this module, but there's no actual state on the module itself. Right? Because when you think about inheritance, we do care about inheriting instance variables, right? Inheriting the state. Alexander B has a question. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so if you only wanted to pass methods along, is when you would use it.
Yeah, well, we only want to apply method behavior to multiple classes and when you would use a module. That's correct. We only care about behavior, not methods. one thing I want to note is this including a module is what's known as a mixin. It's known as a mixin. Why is it called a mixin? Well, we are mixing in the behavior of the module, right? We are mixing in the behavior of the module itself. We're including those methods. Okay, I have a guessing game for people. Let's say I added this add comment method back into our comment. But we're also including this add comment method here. When I run the add comment method on a comment, which method will it run? Will it run our module method, or will it run the method here on the comment class? Everyone type their guess in the chat, the Zoom chat. Just say comment if you think it'll run the method in the comment class, and say commentable if you think it'll run the method in the commentable class. Comment class. Let's see a lot of comment class. All right. Well, let's test to find out, shall we? You're correct. It does use the method in the comment class. Does anyone have any intuition or a guess why we might do that based off the inheritance lesson? Why would we might do that based off the inheritance lesson? Raise your hand and maybe I'll call on you. We can chat about it. Andrew asks, why do you think Ruby is like, hey, we'll use the method in the comment class and not the commentable class?
So that we can override it, so that we can have like it be unique if we need it to be unique.
That is very close to the answer I'm looking for.
Were you looking for the reason the computer does it as opposed to the reason we want the computer?
Yeah, exactly. The reason
okay,
the computer
then
does it.
the reason the computer does it, I think, is because first it searches through the class file, and if it doesn't find it, then it goes to look at what you included.
That's correct. Stats for Andrew S. Great answer. The reason the computer does it is it looks on the class itself to find the definition of that method, right? If it doesn't exist there, it continues to look at the next thing in the Ruby object model, right? When we think about a child and parent, when we think about inheritance, if a method is called on a child class or instance, it looks at that class first to see if that method exists. If it doesn't exist there, it looks at the parent class. If it doesn't exist in the parent class, it looks at, like, there's this global object in Ruby called the kernel. It might look at the kernel next. If it doesn't find it on the kernel, then it'll say undefined method, add comment, right? It kind of continues to look up this Ruby object model to find the method definition. And then if it does find it, it'll use that method definition. If it doesn't, you get a undefined method, right, in Ruby. You'll get an undefined method in Ruby. Andrew S., thank you for that answer. That's exactly what I was looking for. Questions on how Ruby decides which method to use? We're talking specifically about this class and module. If we added this back here. Okay. I'm going to have you create your own module now. In the backend code help channel, I'm going to post some screenshots. Should have done this beforehand, but let me find them real quick. That's not it. Okay. It's in the thread for modules. Taking that code, basically, and doing the instructions below it, I want everyone to create a module based off these two types of car. Looks like a Jeep and a Camry class. I'll put you into pairs to do that. Create the breakout rooms. Okay, so just to repeat, we are doing in the backend code help channel, the thread, taking the Camry class and Jeep class and doing the instructions below. How can we create a module based off similar behavior for both those classes? All right, I'll open the rooms now. Oh, I'm muted and I was talking this entire time. Will someone from Breakout Group 7, either Alex, Catherine, or Keegan, share your screen and share with us the modules you created?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. I didn't realize I was also muted and video muted.
Wrong button day for Alex and I. We're just hitting all the wrong buttons.
It's a rough day.
Yeah.
Can y'all see the screen that you want to be seeing?
Yes.
Perfect. We were unsure as to how to get it to run the way you were, so this is what we ended up with. We were in the process of changing this to Jeep.
Yeah, I think you would create a new instance of the Jeep first and then do it that way.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Oops.
Jeep is Jeep.new.
Right. Jeep. Oh boy, wrong button day today.
Live coding is the absolutely worst for typing the wrong thing. It happens all the time.
New. All right, save it. And then, okay. Right. Going. Ruby. Jeep. Oops. Oh, come on.
You call it Jeff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I sure did. Sorry, Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff. The director of the Turing School of Software Design.
Oops.
Let's make a new one of him.
Perfect.
Chilly air coming your way. Temp is fine here. Awesome.
Cool.
Snaps for Alex in your group. Let's go. Those modules. Okay, let's take a look at the actual modules themselves.
Oh.
So people can see.
Yep.
Implementation of it.
Whew. Too much pressure. All right, here we go. We did this one, and then
engine module, great.
Yep, and then split to the left.
And then the air conditionable module.
Yeah.
All right, that all looks great. Thanks, Alex and her group. I wanted to mention a few things that I forgot. Let me share my screen here. One thing is, ignore that for now. Let's look at the right-hand panel here, the post. When we are including the module, which is called a mixin, it is Ruby convention to put that at the very top of the file. The very top. Now, why do I say that? Well, I think in one class someone asked, how do we organize our class, right? Like what methods should go on top, what methods should go on bottom? Well, you go from the most important thing that you want the person reading this code to know about to the least important thing. And knowing that there is behavior on the instance of the post, right? There's behavior that we're including is a very, very important thing. Because now, as a developer, we know there's a module that's being included, right? A mixin. And therefore, there's methods that we can call on an instance of a post that don't exist within this class. They exist in the commentable module. So it's Ruby convention to include, or if we're including a module, we're doing a mixin here on line 3 to include it at the top of the class. Some of you could be really frustrated by this statement, and I'm sorry. We teach you modules and inheritance and these things because it's important to recognize patterns to refactor your own code, right? To refactor your own code. When you get a quote unquote real world developer job, there's a bunch of code that's written for you. And it's really unlikely that you're going to have to create your own version of inheritance or create your own module. I'm speaking from personal experience, but I imagine that also applies to lots of developers' experiences. I have never once created my own module or my own version of inheritance in my 5 years programming professionally. So you might ask, well, why do you have us create modules inheritance? Why are we learning about this stuff? Well, one is if you see this include commentable, now you know as a developer, there's methods that exist somewhere else that affect this class, right? It's about recognition. Also, the reason we do it is you should always be thinking, how do I reorganize my code or organize my code in a way that makes sense? That follows object-oriented principles, where we don't repeat ourselves. That follows single responsibility principle, right? The main reason is recognition. You will probably never have to create a module in your entire life besides a Turing. But it's good to recognize, like I said here on line 3, this is a mixin. There's methods that exist somewhere else that affect this class, right? Or even knowing this thing in mini tests as you learned yesterday. Oh, the test, this class I'm writing inherits from mini test, right? Knowing some of the underworkings of how Ruby works is why we teach you these things. I'm not saying you'll never create a module or you'll never do inheritance at your job, but I highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. But understanding the reasons why and this pattern recognition is very important for interviewing and also when you get to the job itself. Okay. Jahar has a question. Go ahead.
Can I have half a second to screen share?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. So, oh, apparently I cannot. You have.
I need to stop. Yeah, my bad.
Because I know that like our adder reader is important. Oh, and now we're in my email, but it's not my Slack. So.
Actually, all I can see is your
code.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm doing well this time. What is the proper way to do this? Is it on the separate lines or is it on the same line? Because I know adder reader people have
separate lines, I would say. Separate
okay. And then just keep going down or include them each time?
Include them each time using the include keyword.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. That's a great question. So by convention, the using mixins should happen on a new line. Doug, you had a question. Go ahead.
If we don't need to follow the able naming convention for it to work, then why should we do it? Or is it fine if we don't do it at all, as long as we are creating a module and it says module whatever the name is?
It's fine if you don't. Like two hardest problems in computer programming, they always say it. It's naming things is number one, right? So it's hard to, like, what should we call that engine thing? Ignitionable or engineable. It's like, maybe just engine's okay, because it encapsulates behavior dealing with turning an engine on and off, right? But I would do your best to follow the ABLE, like, postfix convention. But if you can't think of a name for what these methods do, then it's fine to just be like, yeah, engine, or the name of it. Ruby does not require, like, for syntax reasons, it doesn't require us to use like a ABLE postfix. We just need to use the module keyword and include that and require the file. Good question, though. I wanted to share one thing. KK had a great question. How do we test our modules? How do we test our modules? Our modules here on the right, commentable. And here's our commentable test. Well, what we're doing is we are just creating a dummy class in our test. We have the mix in here, right? We're including the commentable module. We have an adder reader for the comments, and then we have this initialize, which is comments that's assigned to empty array. We need that because in our module array, it is modifying the comments instance variable in some way. Here we have a commentable test. It can add comments. We're creating a new instance of dummy class, a new comment. We are adding the comment to the dummy, right? And then we're asserting that the comments include the comment we've added, right? But as you can see in our dummy class, we don't have a add comment method. We are using the one that's provided by the module that we're including here. And then that is how we would test our module. We just create a dummy class of some sort that includes that module. Then I can absolutely post this in your channel as well. There we go. What's this thing called? Commentable test. There we go. So you have an example of how to do that. Was I recording? Yes, I am recording. Thank you. Other questions about modules? How to test modules when we would use modules. Somehow I only have 29 students in here. I guess internet got dropped or something. Okay. Thanks for everyone's time. Tomorrow, I think you'll be learning about class methods, which should be fun, which is another way of maybe refactoring our code or using different behavior. Cool. Thanks for everyone's time. I will see you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.